Minister, I just wonder what your department's plans are to address the findings and conclusions of the Indican report on the cost of disability that was published a number of months ago.
Thank you, Deputy. Cost of disability research is significantly broader than income supports, and it is clear that the findings in the research will have implications for many areas of public policy, including the delivery of care services, health, housing, education, transport and income supports. These relevant departments have been requested to examine the work they are currently committed to undertaking and review these in light of the cost of disability report. Furthermore, they have been asked that any future actions would also be considered in the context of the report. It is very important that these actions are monitored closely right across the whole of government. The National Disability Inclusion Strategy provides the overarching framework for policy and actions in relation to people with disabilities. So the Government has decided that the cost of disability report is to be referred to the National Disability Inclusion Strategy Steering Group, which will take responsibility for monitoring actions taken by departments on foot of the research. This steering group, which as you know is very ably chaired by my colleague Minister of State with responsibility for disability, Anne Rabbitte, is the most appropriate forum in which actions arising from the report can be driven forward. I am keen to address the concerns raised by the people who live with the daily reality of disability, and I, along with my government colleagues, will use the results of the research to inform potential measures to address these concerns. From the perspective of my department, it is worth noting that a number of measures were introduced as part of Budget 2022 in relation to people with disabilities and their carers, which will go towards alleviating the financial costs experienced. These include a combination of core weekly payment rate increases, increases in earnings disregards, as well as supports to employers. Furthermore, under the Roadmap for Social Inclusion, my department has a commitment to develop and consult on a strawman proposal for the restructuring of long-term disability payments. I have asked my officials to revisit the strawman proposal to take on board the findings of the cost of disability research.
Thank you, Minister, and I obviously acknowledge that this report requires a whole-of-government report or perspective and support, and that it has been referred to the National Disability Inclusion Strategy Steering Group for further work. But I suppose this report confirms what was widely suspected but maybe not acknowledged, that the cost of disability is quite significant. The cost of disability is the extra spending that a person with a disability must face in dealing with day-to-day lives that able-bodied people don't have to face, or the same with the family who have a member with a disability. But this report puts the average additional cost of disability to a person with a severe disability at between €9,600 and €12,300, and then for with a less severe disability between €8,700 and €10,000. And their average, so obviously there's some people and families who are spending a lot more than that. And it depends, I think, on the severity of the disability, but also on where the person resides. And there, of course, there are unmet costs as met by many as they are not currently affordable. Now, I suppose, looking at some aspects of the report, it indicates that this country spends the fourth least of its social protection budget and disability supports compared to 31 other European countries.
Thank you, Deputy. Yeah, well, as I said, dealing with disability, the cost of disability is a whole of government, and we have to do that in a whole of government way. The reform of disability payments will take on board the recommendations of the report, and it's clear that, as I said, a whole of government response is needed. There are recommendations in respect of housing, health, education, transport and others. From a social protection perspective, one of the recommendations is a payment that is linked to your disability. As you know, at the minute it is a flat rate of €208, whether you have a mild, a moderate or a profound disability, and some people with a mild disability could do some work, and we know that, and there's others with a profound disability, they can't work at all. So should the payment be graduated? That's something we need to look at. Should you get more when you have a profound disability than when you have a mild disability? So it's about it's about looking at that. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Minister. But I suppose Okay, I acknowledge that there's been an increase in the weekly payments, and I acknowledge the increase in the weekly disregard, but we look at the cost of living and how rapidly that has risen. So that increase is gone. It's not even covering it, and the cost of disability is probably increasing. But, you know, we have a very poor record on employment of disabled people in this country, and I think more support needs to be given to people to support themselves. So maybe, for example, revise the current timeframes for reducing social welfare supports for people who are going back to work or engaging in self-employment, or maybe introduce appropriate training tailored to the individual people, because oftentimes training for an able-bodied person will be different for a disabled person because it'll take longer, you know, maybe through tiredness or whatever. Just an issue on CE schemes as well. A lot of disabled people don't take up CE schemes because when they do, okay, they get the equivalent payment plus a €20 top-up, and that's fine for the duration of the scheme. But when they revert back to disability payment, it's not a seamless reversion, and it takes months sometimes for the payment to be rectified, and that's something that I think could easily be looked at. I don't understand why that issue is. So it's just to encourage more people to take up employment opportunities and training opportunities.
Thank you. I do agree with you, Deputy, that we need to get more people with disabilities and help them get back into the workforce, because that's obviously very important. Just to say that I did work to extend the Ability programme last year, and that was funded through EU funding, and the funding was due to finish. And I did meet with them, and I ensured that the Dormant Accounts Fund supported this an excellent programme, and they gave me an outline of what they were doing, and it really is fantastic work. They're working with people with disabilities, they're working with employers, and they're getting people back into work. And the other is employability, provide a great service as well, and it's how we can you know, build on that. And again, we're going to, as I said, work across government and as to how we can improve the situation. So the points you have made with me, Deputy, we'll certainly take those on board, but and in particular the report that was commissioned by my department, but as I said, the committee is looking at it, and it's what we, you know, there's a number of different options that we need to look at. Thanks.